The IPRO QIN-QIO presents Value in Vaccination video discussion series. Interview by Nadine Spence Clark, Quality Improvement Specialist, IPRO QIN-QIO, New York. Part 2, Influencing Factors.
And for this segment, we're going to be speaking with Verna Cavey, and she is going to be sharing her experiences with us with vaccination. Verna has had a history of all three vaccinations, the COVID, influenza, and pneumococcal vaccine. And so she's going to be telling us a little bit about her experiences. Verna, welcome to the program, and please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Nadine. I'm Verna Cavey. I'm an independent living resident in a senior community. I'm in my 70s and life's pretty darn good. So I'm glad to meet you and talk with you today.
Verna, thank you very much. It's so important for our audience to know that, to know exactly the type of community in which you live. This way they can relate. So it's relatable. And again, we want to thank you so much. So one of the things that we've come across, Verna, is that there are challenges for residents, their families, their caregivers in building confidence to get vaccinated, not only for COVID, which is like the latest thing, but even the yearly flu and the influenza vaccines. There's an issue around building confidence. So when you think back to your vaccination experiences, maybe starting with COVID, what was that like? Were you always confident? What was it like?
Actually, no, I avoided the flu shot, for example, for years and years. I was young, I was healthy. I didn't have a lot of confidence in its efficiency. And every time the doctor brought it up and I said no, there wasn't a great deal of concern. However, as I got older and developed some pulmonary issues, then my specialist sat down and talked with me, and we had a good conversation. And at that point, I realized my risk level was going up. And so that's fairly recently. So only within the last season, with a combination of pulmonary concerns, aging, and well, COVID also entered the picture. So at that point, I felt that I needed to be thoughtful about it and careful. And at that point, after years of not taking it, I felt that it was the right thing to do.
So your decision making was aided by the fact that you were experiencing some medical challenges that kind of pushed the decision a bit after speaking with your provider?
Right. I clearly was becoming more vulnerable, and I had to weigh that into the decision-making process.
That's a great point. That's very common for a lot of people may have a lot of comorbidities. And so because of that reason, their providers may advise them to go ahead and get vaccinated. So my next question was, why do you think it's important to get vaccinated? And you've already touched on why it was important for you, but just generally speaking, if you had to share this with someone, why do you think it's important?
Well, I think, quite honestly, it depends on the individual and their circumstances and their body. To give you an example, a friend is very vulnerable to medicines. She reacts to them, foods. She's hypersensitive, basically. And she talked to me and said, I'm hesitant about getting the COVID vaccination. And I said to her, well, do you have enough information? And it became clear that she didn't. And that's really a critical element of problem solving. You have to have enough information. And so she decided to go to the doctor that knew her the best, who respected her the best, and whose professionalism she really respected. And so that piece was missing for her. You really have to have enough solid information to make that decision. So I would say to anyone, weigh your own situation, make sure you have enough information, carefully weigh the pros and cons and the risk of either, what's the risk of getting it versus not getting it.
Now, you touched on a piece that is very, very important and that has been gaining momentum, a discussion that has been gaining momentum in the healthcare community. And that's about that partnership or that comfort between the provider and the patient. And you said that she felt comfortable. She went to the doctor that she felt the most comfortable with and the one that
Yes,
respected her the most.
that's
And
right. I knew her
yeah,
the most. Yeah.
right. And that kind of taps into patient-centered care.
Yes.
And on a broader level, patient and family centered care. So that partnership, can you speak a little bit more about the importance of having that partnership with the provider?
In today's world, we think of working with our doctors in a collaborative way. I mean, the authoritarian edict coming down from the doctor is gone or should be gone. You should have a really full conversation and feel confident in asking the questions that you think need to be answered. And so I choose a doctor based on that, who respects me, who sees me as an equal, and who's willing and patiently answers my questions.
In this time with COVID and with all the uncertainties and the questions that existed around the virus and around the vaccine, we can draw on the fact that having that collaborative relationship with your provider became even more important as information became available, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Um, and you should have a provider who has the information, who stays current and can update you.
You don't mind just sharing with us some of the places that you found reliable information? What were some of the sources that you leaned on for information about COVID and just maybe even the pneumonia and the influenza vaccine over the years, if you can remember when you got those?
I listened a lot to various sources. I was careful not to lean on hearsay, what the next door neighbor had to say, or what some, really illegitimate site on the internet had to say. To really talk to intelligent people who had also been listening, to talk to medical professionals, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, it really is a careful process. It is a responsibility um, to listen to all sources of information and to be able to understand when something is a legitimate source um, versus. And the other thing is, I looked at the risk. For example, I knew with pneumonia that it was a killer for older people. I knew with shingles that I had a friend who suffered horribly in pain with it, and really was suicidal at one point. It was so terrible. So that information told me that I really, really didn't want to experience those things. Um, I knew there were certain illnesses that put me at terrible risk, and certainly COVID. The information coming to me was that I had friends dying, and I was going to virtual funerals. That was about as solid information as you could get. I mean, and it was heartbreaking. So that for me, that was very real at a time when people saw it as something just on the news.
So, in other words, it hit close to home, and because of that,
It's,
yeah. Okay. And because
mhm.
of that, you were able to even see, I guess, greater value in getting vaccinated because you knew people who had passed away as a result.
Right, right. And that's about as high risk as you're going to get.
Now that you've been vaccinated, how do you feel? Has it done anything to your confidence level, as far as how you feel with socializing with others? I know you live in I guess, a pretty close-knit community, would you say?
Right. Yes, we're pretty fully vaccinated, I think. And so we feel safe here. We have herd immunity. I just went out to my first party, my first restaurant, and my first grocery trip. So, and I felt good. I felt confident. It's still a little confusing, the grocery store. Some people had masks, some didn't. So we're still learning. Um, but no, I felt tremendously confident. And right now, where we are in the process is that now we're learning about a possible booster in the fall. And again, that being responsible to hearing the information and weighing it is going to start all over again. Um, this is not going to be a one-time thing, you know, for the rest of my life. I will have to make these medical decisions carefully.
Now, Verna, what would you say to residents and even to staff who are still a bit reluctant? What would you like to share with them in helping to build their confidence?
I think to know that a good decision is within reach, that you have that ability, that there are people around you who will provide information. It's not perfect. I mean, you know, there are still some uncertainties. For example, I knew when I get a pneumonia or a shingles or even a COVID shot that for a couple days I take things off my calendar and find a good book to read. And some people are uncomfortable with those 48 hours. Some people aren't affected, but I felt tired. I needed to just kind of relax a little bit. But again, it's that weighing, you know, a couple days of discomfort to my friends were dying. So given the information I had, um, I made that decision. And I think for anyone, um, it's not a perfect process. There's some element of uncertainty. But I think as human beings, we have good minds and good hearts. And I think we can find the information and support to make those decisions.
Thank you so much for being so candid and for sharing your experiences, and especially the fact that it wasn't necessarily an organic decision. It wasn't necessarily something that was, you know, one, two, three.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. There were some influencing factors for sure, and a lot of information to weigh and to consider. And any last thoughts before as we wrap up here? Any last thoughts, Verna?
Well, you know, it's an interesting thing. I'm 73, and when I was a little girl, they were developing the polio vaccination. So it's been a journey, you know, of, but in the end, I'm really grateful that I have an opportunity, at least to make the decision that that opportunity exists. And so, you know, I want to live a long and happy life, and I will do whatever I need to do um, to make good decisions.
Well, Verna, thank you so very much. We're so grateful to have you with us today. And thank you for sharing your perspectives. I am sure that they will go a far way in helping someone maybe to come to that decision. And it's very valuable, all that you've said today. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
Join us for more vaccine support. How? Contact Nadine Spence Clark, Quality Improvement Specialist, nsclark@ipro.org. Visit our website, qi.ipro.org. Follow us on our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. This is a product of the collaboration between IPRO, Health-Centric Advisors, and Clarent, serving as the IPRO Quality Innovation Network, quality improvement organization for the New England states, New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Maryland, Delaware, and the District of Columbia.